G'day, fools. Scott Phillips here, the Motley Fool's Chief Investment Officer, with another edition of one of they're all our favourites. I have no favourite children. One of our favourite video series, our favourite investment books, where I get to talk to the investment team here at the Motley Fool about some of their favourite investing books. We might even widen that scope at some point. Little hint for you, we might have some other guests coming down the pike. But for now, we're sticking within the Motley Fool investment team because we have so many great analysts and so many wonderful books to talk about. Today's guest is Chris Copley. G'day, buddy. How are you?
G'day, Scott. I'm doing very well, thanks.
Good to hear it. Now, mate, I'm going to assume this is not a slant at my age. I'm going to assume this is not a slant about the fact that I know too little about the topic of today's conversation, because you've suggested explain the cloud like I'm 10. Now, I don't know if you're trying to gently give me a nudge, just kind of help me a little bit understand some of my old dinosaur ways, maybe help me discover a new way of investing, or maybe just realize that the cloud isn't just a thing up there. I've seen the memes. I know what you young people think. I'm going to assume that's not true, Chris. I'm going to assume this is actually an investing-related book that helps people understand the cloud, the thing we call the cloud, the kind of network, remote, distant, connected world we have via this thing we call the cloud, which is not really a cloud at all, of course, and as powering so much of commerce, entertainment, interaction, business today. We're doing this over a cloud bit of software, so if there's any lags, that's why. But the Zooms of the world, the Skypes, the Netflixes, the Amazon Web Services, there's plenty of them. And on the assumption I'm not stealing your thunder, tell me about the book called Explain the Cloud Like I'm 10 by Todd Hoff.
Yes, this book isn't just for the old folks, Scott. It's for everyone, and I know I certainly got a lot from it. And there's certainly concepts and things that I struggled to grasp. So I know I'm not a developer, so there are certainly things about the cloud that I wanted to wrap my head around as well. And I think
Nice.
This book really helped me clarify a number of questions and misunderstandings as well. So the book,
Cool.
Explain the Cloud Like I'm 10, it essentially does what it says on the cover. So it takes topics, many of which are quite complex, and it tries to explain it in a way which is more easy for people to understand. So it takes you through topics like what does the cloud look like, how the cloud works, and then it explains topics like what is a cloud service. It takes you through the layers of the cloud value chain, so the infrastructure as a service businesses, platform as a service, software as a service, and it even has dedicated chapters detailing what goes on in the background of certain cloud services. So examples like
cool.
Facebook Messenger pop up, Google Maps, Netflix, and more. So it's great to see what does go on in the background, because often, it's magic. You send a message through and all of a sudden it's on someone's phone. You don't really know what goes on in the background. But this book does a great job of helping you understand what exactly does go on in the background and in the cloud. And it also details the benefits of the cloud as well, the negatives of using the cloud, and how the cloud has evolved over the years. So it does go into a fair bit of detail, especially for a book just titled Explain the Cloud Like I'm 10. But for those of you who find the cloud confusing or just too hard to wrap your head around, I think that this is a great book for you.
Nice, man. I really like that. I like the idea of there's no like. I think is it Peter Lynch? Someone says never invest in anything you can't illustrate with a crayon. And the kind of idea is, if you can't explain it that simply, maybe the version of the cloud would be don't invest in your cloud business unless you can explain it to a 10-year-old, because that's kind of the point, right? If you don't really know what you're doing, you can throw buzzwords around. I can throw buzzwords around, and in fact, the more complex buzzwords, generally speaking, as a rule in life, it's not always the case, but as a rule, the more buzzwords someone uses, the less I figure either they understand it or the less they want me to understand it and want them just to trust them. And I figure both of those things are not great. In fact, here at the Motley Fool, we're all about trying to help people understand investing without preaching to them or speaking down to them. Just saying, hey, if I was you, what would I want to know? What would I think was important? So we try and, I guess, not necessarily like people are 10, but we try and make things as simple as they can be, just because people feel smarter if they use big words, but it's not really helping anybody. It sounds like this book is kind of on the same lines.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the reasons why I wanted to chat about this book today is because the concept of the cloud is important to everyone, and its relevance and importance is only growing with each year. So whether you're an investor, as you mentioned before, you want to stay in your own wheelhouse. You want to have, a circle of competence around what you're investing and understand what you're investing in. And you may have found yourself ruling out certain investment opportunities and cloud investments purely from the basis that you don't really understand exactly how these solutions work. And similarly, you might not let the unknown stop you from investing in these types of businesses, but there's risks. Like there's always a concern that if you don't understand what the business does that you're investing in at the first sign of turbulence, and that might be a falling share price, for example, you could be more likely to jump ship, as you just don't have the level of understanding or conviction in what the business does. And it doesn't mean you need to be a developer. You don't need to know every bit of code that goes on in the background, but you need to understand the benefits that it brings to the customers and the real edge that it brings over competitors that in the more, I guess, traditional style of desktop software and those sorts of areas as well. So there's also the fact that, the cloud is continuing to grow in adoption. So investing in these types of businesses, I think it's a great book to read and a great concept to understand, because many businesses are now leveraging the cloud, and that can often come with strong tailwinds that can help these businesses to help deliver a strong return. So by expanding your, I guess, circle of competence and your understanding into areas such as the cloud, I think it really opens up your investing world to lots of areas that are growing and growing quickly and could potentially deliver strong investing returns from this point moving forward. Even after the last 18 months or so, as we've seen in the pandemic, a lot of these businesses have seen tailwinds. I still think there's a lot of adoption ahead for the cloud, and its importance is going to continue to grow in the years ahead.
Yeah, I really love that point, Chris, actually, because so many great points you actually just made. But the circle of competence idea, I'm pretty sure it might be Buffett or Munger, one of the two billionaires who run Berkshire Hathaway between them. I can't remember who it was. Basically, if you enlarge your circle of competence, if you learn something now, what would it be? And both guys kind of went, well, technology. We know we don't know it. We kind of feel like we're too old. I'm not sure they are actually, by the way, but they kind of feel like they were too old to start again. But if they were starting today, they'd make it all about tech. And so, as you say, whether it's a business you're trying to understand, whether you own a business and you want to understand the risks or the threats, or they say the value chain is so important, right? Think about, so an example I use all the time and probably way too often, but think about air travel. In better times, in pre and hopefully post-COVID times, air travel's gone through the roof over the last 50 years, hugely. And yet the airlines themselves make no money, while the airports have made out like bandits. So if you understand air travel, understanding where the value accretes to whom, consumers, fantastically well. Airports have done fantastically well. Poor old airlines in between, not so well, because that's been the commodity in that value chain. And so, as you rightly say, mate, understanding where that value comes from, super important. And even for someone like me, as old as I am, I figure I know a bit about the cloud, if hopefully more than a bit. But I will say, I'm the first to say, I don't really understand it from a building block level up. I kind of have a 40,000 foot view that hopefully goes down to about, 10, 20,000 feet, if we want to torture the analogy. But I know I don't go all the way to the ground because I don't know some of the answers to some of the things you've just talked about. So definitely looking forward to having a look at this one. It's probably overdue. I didn't even know about the book, to be fair. So I'm not overdue in terms of on my reading list. It wasn't there at all. So I'm glad you've brought it to us. And that's the beauty of this series, mate. I'm really stoked. The usual suspects, the ones I expected we'd cover, we still haven't, which is great because it means there's plenty left to cover. But books like this that I just would never have touched, would never have thought to touch, you bringing it to the table, mate, really, really useful. Just before we go, anything else that stands out to you for investors that they would get out of reading Explain the Cloud Like I'm 10?
Well, actually, not just for investors. So we've sort of touched that on a bit, but I think the great thing about this book, it goes past that. So if you're a business owner, you're a business employee, or even just someone who uses these solutions, I think this is quite important as well. So, you might be a business owner that's looking for more traditional desktop accounting, that's still using traditional desktop accounting software, for example, and you've been seeing other businesses change to the cloud. Well, this book helps to explain why businesses are doing this, some of the advantages of doing this, and some of the disadvantages of doing this. So you can apply this to your own business decisions. You can also apply this to your own, I guess, consumer decisions as well. So you might be a consumer that's deciding, I want to buy a new thermostat for my house. Well, there are now cloud-enabled thermostat alternatives these days. And if you have a better understanding of how to use them, how it works, the benefits that it can bring, it can help you make more informed decisions around that as well. And who knows, maybe the cloud-enabled device is the best one for you. So yeah, this book has just so many ways in which it can be applied and useful that goes even beyond the investing area as well. So I would strongly encourage everyone to put this on their reading list and to expand their knowledge in the area of the cloud.
Mate, relatively recently, I got a Wi-Fi controller for the air conditioning unit that you can't see just above my head here, and it is my favorite gadget because this office is a little bit of distance from the house. Getting to turn it on before I leave the house, so I get here and it's already warm in winter or cool in summer. I don't know how much I paid for it, mate, but it's worth at least double. So I agree with you completely. There you go, Chris Copley, bringing in the value, whether it's investing, business, your consumer life, or just life in general. Read this book. You'll know more about the cloud. And like me, you won't feel like maybe you'll still feel like you're old. You won't appear quite so, at least in conversation with young blokes like Chris. Chris, thank you, mate, for spending some time with us on our favourite investing books series. And fools from Chris and I and the whole Motley Fool team. Until next time, fool on.